don't have to tell you things are bad. Everybody knows things are bad. They're crazy. It's like everything everywhere is going crazy, so we don't go out anymore. We sit in the house, and slowly the world we're living in is getting smaller, and all we say is, please, at least leave us alone in our living rooms. Let me have my toaster and my TV and my steel-belted radios, and I won't say anything. Just leave us alone. Well, I'm not going to leave you alone. I want you to get mad. I don't want you to protest. I don't want you to riot. I don't want you to write to your congressman because I wouldn't know what to tell you to write. I don't know what to do about the depression and the inflation and the Russians and the crime in the street. All I know is that first, you've got to get mad. You've got to say, I'm a human being. God damn it. My life has value. I want you to get up now. I want all of you to get up out of your chairs. I want you to get up right now and go to the window, open it, and stick your head out and yell, I'm as mad as hell, and I'm not going to take this anymore!
It's a very good morning to you. Welcome along to 100.5 Cork City Community Radio. It's the 28th day of September. I know, it's like a runaway train this time. Welcome to The Zone, a current affairs and political programme here on Cork City Community Radio. My name is Donal Quinlan, and I'm glad to have your company. A little later on in the show, I want to play an audio clip from about 2 weeks back now from Charlie Kirk's wife at the eulogy. And my point of playing it is this, and her eulogy is not about politics. It's about her love for her last husband, and also her communicating her love and the sorrow of his 2 children that are left on this world without a father. And that has nothing to do with politics. It has everything to do with humanity. And I'll just be giving a bit of commentary on that. And the commentary and playing that in no way reflects the position of this radio station, because I want that to be made clear, that the radio station, by me playing this, doesn't represent one side or another, so hence the reason for that statement. Right, down to the business, and our guest this morning walked in, and unfortunately for him, he was offered a cup of tea, but we couldn't give him a cup of tea because the electricity went out for a short while, but we solved the problem. But he's here now and he's fighting fit. It's a newbie to the Cork City Council, and a more matured person, has lived a good full working life, has been in his community, always kind of in the background, being concerned about what goes on in community, and decided on the last outing for electing of the local city council members that he'd throw his hat in the ring. We'll find out more about that and himself in just a moment. But like I say, he's an independent councillor. He's not affiliated to the independent party, because that confusion can rest now. The word independent, I think, now holds 2 meanings. It's the literal meaning of this man is on his own, and the independent party is a coming together of independence. It's confusing. Perhaps sometime we'll have them in to totally explain it. But I want to introduce to you this morning Councillor Albert Deasy. Albert, welcome.
Thank you very much, Donal. Great to be in the zone, and thank you for asking me.
Oh, brilliant to have you. So Albert, I'm really interested to know, you were living your life, doing the things you do, and what inspired you, or what made you think that, you need to get into a place where you can change things?
I suppose my head was a bit of a madhouse there for a while coming up to the election last year. Look, I've always been really interested in politics. My house, growing up at home on Polladuff Road, was a very, very political house. As I was saying to there Shane a while ago, my earliest memories as a child was smoke-filled kitchen with men and women going around with electoral registers and filling out envelopes and posting out requests for voting, etc., etc. And a Saturday morning. Our house was a constituency office if people were looking for houses. There was a long queue out the door. So very, very political. I know my mother was very, very committed. It was a Fine Gael house. My father was less political, with a Fianna Fáil background. So sort of a mixed marriage, really, but largely dominated by Fine Gael.
Yeah.
And so, our house was all the time. We had people like Peter Barry, Sean O'Leary, Jerry Bushmer in later years, Simon Coveney, etc., all in and out. When it came to canvassing, I did canvass, and very proud of that, and taught me an awful lot. And so that, and then I suppose that was just growing up, and then obviously when I don't want to go through my kind of working career.
No, that's fine. Yeah.
So then I was in business, and then we kind of retired. We were myself and my wife at an insurance brokerage, very, very busy, and all went well. So we decided to take a bit of a career change in that. My wife was doing an MA in university, and I decided to go to university and study politics then. Not that I needed to study politics, but I was fascinated with politics and Irish. And so then I suppose when it came then to last year, 2024, I was, as my wife was as well, we were both very, very exercised by the referenda which the government brought forward, the family and care referenda. So I was following very, very carefully events, and Michael McDowell in Dublin and Senator Sharon Keoghan had put in Trojan effort to kind of critique what was going on. And I suppose my first foray into that then was literally getting 175 posters from Dublin, and myself and my wife literally buying a ladder, getting another young lad to help us go around the city and in all the prominent places, with a peaky cap. It's not my style to pick up polls, so we were very exercised over that. And then when that result, there was a resounding rejection of that by 3/4 of the population. It was a fantastic result. And then I suppose after that, then I decided that's the end of that then. But I couldn't sleep, I couldn't rest. As I said, I was tormented. And then I went up to my wife. She was in bed asleep, and I said, "Yeah, I'm going to run."
Right.
And initially, her initial reaction was no, and all that. But she was wonderful, and the two of us headed off. And it was literally myself, my wife, and we have 3 children. One of them was away, and the other 2 were really, really good. So
you said you grew up in the house kind of influenced by Fianna Fáil, Fine Gael, and you mentioned Peter Barry, God rest him, the T-man, Peter Barry, and Jerry Buttermore and a few more of them. So why didn't you gravitate towards one of the 2 major parties, considering, you were around them so much as a younger person, where you might have been influenced by them?
Well, I suppose interesting now, because I remember I spent 9 weeks and 4 days every single day except Sunday. I went morning, noon and night canvassing, and I met an aspiring, he was elected politician in Ballincollig, and I'd never met him before, and he asked me the very, very same question. And I said, I'll tell you what the reason was. I said, I can come out of Mass on a Sunday morning, and I as I do watch people standing outside the hospital gates there occasionally praying peacefully and quietly, but I said, I could do the very same and I can be arrested. And I said, but you did nothing about it, And then at the time I said, you have the hate speech legislation, and I said, you have never spoken up about that. You've never you've never stood up, And then I went on and various other issues, and I said, you never did. So but he empathised and he understood my views. And he shared my views, but he said nothing. And I suppose that was a great lesson to me. And why did I do it? And in fact, the first day of my canvass, I met a formidable lady outside in Bishopstown. And she said to me, now, Mr. Deasy, she didn't know me at all. I didn't know her at all. And she said, what are your values? And I had to think, what are my values? I really had never thought about it. And on my feet, I was thinking about my own traditional, growing up, a traditional, ordinary family. We went to Mass. We were taught, tell the truth. And that was one condition of living in our house. You had to tell the truth, and you you had to, I suppose, to be courageous as well. When you saw things that are not right, or if they're wrong, you have to stand up for that, and you have to speak your mind.
You talked about outside the hospital praying. I guess that was during. Was that the 8 for the abortion referendum?
No. This is the Safe Passage Bill which went through the Dáil, and which was supported by Fine Gael, all the major parties. Like,
Sorry, why was the praying outside the hospital going on then? Just because I picked up on that?
No, I suppose people, for whatever reason, they stand outside the hospital and they pray. Obviously, there are abortions that take place.
Outside CUH?
Outside CUH.
On a weekly basis? Or?
Yeah. Regular basis. You'd see very nice elderly men and women, they offend nobody. They're not carrying any crucifixes. They're just silently praying. But with the new
restrictions,
they literally can be arrested for that, for having. These are what I refer to the aspiring councillor as thought crimes. You can't have a thought inside in your head. You don't even have to speak. And I thought this is real Soviet Union type of stuff. So that was my So you asked me why wouldn't I stand, because I felt that they had. And I explained to one of your colleagues outside, the seminal moment for me was, I suppose, on the repeal date, regardless of what way one voted. I'm not interested in any of that.
Yeah.
But the idea that politicians would celebrate an outcome, as they all did publicly in Dublin Castle, that was the parting of the ways for me. I couldn't identify with people that would do that.
Right. And how do you feel about these restrictions that are going to be coming in place, where if you want to protest outside a hospital or a clinic, whatever performs abortions, that you have to be a certain distance back from it? They're not taking away your right to protest.
Yeah.
They're not taking away your right to peacefully protest.
Yeah.
They're just trying to get a balance of protecting the people that want to use the services, and at the same time leaving the people that want to protest without either side being stressed out.
But nobody. Look, it's all about peaceful dialogue. I mean, I'm talking about people here that are the most angelic people you'll ever see. I mean, the irony here is you can actually protest inside the hospital, but you can't stand outside the hospital. There's that kind of stuff. I'm not. Obviously, I wouldn't be. I completely wouldn't. I don't like protest at all. Actually, well, certainly, protest that would upset people in that way. I would hate that. I'm talking about, nice, ordinary, decent people that are quietly standing outside the hospitals, that by law they can be arrested. That's the reality. And I suppose that was the type of thing. I suppose really what I was saying, that the likes of Fine Gael, and they had lost their mettle. I mean, as I said, when it came to hate speech as well, they all stood idly by, and that was really what exercised me. And again, in relation to, as was proven, in relation to both referenda, most of them didn't support the government proposition. But most of them said nothing. And that's my point, is that you need to stand by your principles, and you need to speak up. And
well, party politics is kind of ruled by the whip, and you're either given a free vote or you're not, depending on what the whip of the party decides. That's always the way it's been. And if you want to be a member of that party and run in an election and be elected, and that was probably part of the reason you chose to be an independent, because you're your own man, and you can voice the concerns of your community, not your concerns of a party whips. Would that be fair to say?
Yeah, but then again, that brings down. That's true. Yeah, that's true. I mean, I'm a very, very independent. And people used to ask me at the door, are you independent? And that was always my answer. I'm a very independent, and I will always speak my mind. You have to do that. But I suppose that's the problem. Then, of course, when you at the moment, is that I suppose a lot of the politics, I suppose a lot of it lacks kind of they lack political legitimacy. I mean, if they're promoting ideas and values that are not, that are out of kilter with what the people want out there, well, that's a problem then, really, isn't it?
But you spoke about being, a man of traditional values, and you spoke about the woman who came up to you and said, "What do you stand for?" But times have changed, Albert, from the times when you were growing up and the values that your parents instilled in you to where we are today. It's a totally different world. It's a different century. There's different things. Some people would say there's more freedoms now for women who don't have to no longer, kind of smuggle themselves onto a plane and go to England for a couple of days to have an abortion. People, when it comes to gender, who were uncomfortable with their gender can express themselves now. People who were in the closet, to use a term that the LGBT for years and years, and who were afraid of being harassed and violence committed against them, can now walk reasonably free amongst the streets, safe and sound in the knowledge to know that they're being accepted for who they are. So, all these things would they fly in the face of your traditional thoughts?
Oh God, not at all. Sure, I mean, some of my best friends are gay and lesbian. I mean, not absolutely. It's nothing to do with that. It's nothing to do with it.
Or gender or anything else, no?
Well, I mean, there are two genders.
That's fine. Yeah. Okay.
I mean, to deny, to deny biological reality at a molecular level is absurd, and you know, and I stand on that, you know, but I don't go around. You don't go around trying to offend people either, you know. No, but I mean, you must have the right to free speech. That's what it's all about. You know, you must have a right to kind of to propagate and to express yourself, and that's what's under attack really here. That's really what I'm trying to say here is that, for example, in relation to the safe passage legislation that went through, I believe that certainly most of Fine Gael, most of Fianna Fáil, anyone that I've ever spoken to, and certainly around hate speech, for example, they all stayed silent. None of them spoke up. And so what happened was you found that when it came to an election that they were completely out of kilter with the views of the overwhelming majority of the population. So that, you know, what I'm trying to say is my values haven't changed. I don't believe that the overwhelming values of society have changed. That there's an attempt to impose a construct on society, i.e. that you accept an authoritarian mandate that thou shalt say this and thou shalt not say that.
Well, how would you agree with the concept of free speech, but there are social consequences to what you say, but nobody's stopping you from saying it, but there are social consequences for what you say. But again, you have the freedom to say it or not say it.
But I don't. Of course, I mean, like, free speech is a fundamental tenet of democracy. You know, the right to say and to think what you feel. I mean, there are always...
You take the present situation of immigration into this country, right? What if that free speech is degrading and insulting and hurtful to those people, and it's causing them heartache, it's causing them sorrow, it's causing them anxiety, it's really making their lives difficult because people can say what they say under free speech? How do you protect the most marginalised, vulnerable people in the country from stuff like that?
Well, how do you protect anybody? I suppose there are laws there. I mean, if you were incitement to violence and incitement to hatred, there are consequences for that. And if I say something here, for example, that libels or slanders somebody, you know, there are legal consequences for that. But I suppose, yeah, so you know, and growing up, I mean, how do you learn anything? You learn by making mistakes. You know, I've often said the wrong things. Of course I have. You know, I mean, when you learn to walk, you have to, learn. Falling is a part of it, like, you know. So learning how to express yourself, and that's a skill you acquire by making mistakes. And that's a kind of, that must be left there. I mean, the idea that there are always people going around deliberately offending people, I'm sure there are, and there are these.
Yes.
And these people are shunned generally by society. Generally shunned. People say he's a loudmouth, he's unreliable. Stay away. That's the way society generally deals with that. You don't need legislation, I think, anyway. Any more legislation to, because, you know, I mean.
But you see, also the fear factor here is, Andrew, that the person that says these things and you put them down as a loudmouth or far right or whatever the label is you want to put them on, they're making more and more progress. They become more and more emboldened in what they can say and what they can do if they're not taken out and, you know, given a dressing down. And that's not happening. We have, you know, I mean, I'm sure passing through town, nobody noticed that all the tricolours up in the light poles and the symbolism for what that is by the people that put those flags up is far from what the tricolour represented back in the day. It's like Ireland for the Irish. It's a statement against immigration, much like you see in England with the St. George's Cross and so on and so forth. And the people that see that, who are in this country, legally or illegally, it's almost a threat to them. And that's not right. We had an Indian couple attacked brutally, a doctor brutally attacked up in Dublin. You know, we've had incidences here in Cork as well. And all of this was derived from people who would hear things mostly and kind of see no dress down of the person that said it. You know, it emboldens them to continue to do something more serious.
Maybe it does. I'm not sure. I don't know, you know. I kind of trust people, you know, or I trust society to kind of regulate itself. As I said, trying to explain there, like, you know, there were always, growing up, and I've always noticed people, they were loudmouths and they said things and people might laugh or whatever, but they shun them, they move away. But I mean, on the tricolour thing, really, let me put it this way to you, and you talk about the evidence. I'm not so sure when you say, where is the actual empirical evidence? I mean, there was a guard brutally stabbed in the street in Dublin there a few weeks ago. There were men up in Sligo beheaded. I mean, nobody's, all sorts of stuff, and these are horrible, horrible things. With regard to the tricolour, my own position on that is, I don't like to see the tricolour flown. For example, outside pubs. I don't like to see, for example, the Gaza flag, the Palestinian flag flown outside pubs as well.
Why?
I tell you why. Because people are exploiting people's misery for profit. And the same, like, for example, even at football matches, I always found it offensive to see the Irish tricolour outside pubs. Why? To exploit people to sell alcohol or whatever it is. So can I just finish?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I don't like to see the tricolour up flagpoles. I don't like that. I really don't. It's marking territory. It's not nice. I'm a frequent visitor to the north of Ireland, and I don't like to see towns marked out in the curbs. I think it's horrible. But by the same token, people are flagging that they have concerns. People are beginning to feel marginalised. People have issues around housing. People have issues around the cost of living. And, people feel, and that's their intuition, and they're right, they're quite entitled to express that. I mightn't agree with it, but I have to defend their right to express that, that they are not being treated as well as they should be.
But these people that fly the flag in support of the Palestinians, given that it's a genocide that's going on out there, have the right of expression, and there are different cornerstones in a democracy: freedom of speech, right of expression, etc., that are very strong. The right to peaceful protest, etc. So the right of expression, you kind of think, well, I don't like to see it outside pubs. I don't like to see the Palestinian flag being flown. That's merely someone expressing what they feel themselves.
Sure, that's exactly what I'm saying in relation to flying the tricolour. It's the same expression. People are concerned, but I prefer not to have those. I like to keep, as I said, I've always gone back to Italian 90. I didn't like it then. It's one of my strongest memories of it. I went, I was a big supporter, but I didn't like to see them flying outside pubs. Any green, any colour, but the tricolour is pride of place, and that's the national flag. And there's a lot of blood, sweat and tears shed for us to have that flag in our own sovereign, independent state.
So if you had, a decision to make in the morning, where would you say that the tricolour should only fly?
I think it should be flown respectfully, all on public buildings, full stop.
So private houses or private individuals would not have the right to put out their own flag.
I didn't say the right. I mean, you can do. I mean, I'd give it. I would never tell anybody, Donal, what they can.
Well, you wouldn't like that idea.
I don't like that idea.
You wouldn't like that idea.
No, I don't like that idea. And we the same. It's not appropriate. I mean, I have great dignity, and I mean, I feel terribly for what's going on in Gaza. Awful. It's terrible, appalling genocide. Of course it is. It's terrible. But we need, I still don't like to see publicans using that as a sort of it's marking territory, but it's also exploiting people as well.
In what way is it exploiting people?
Well, you're using it as a prop, as a promotional tool.
But is that your interpretation of what the person did to put it up there, or is that exactly what the person put it up there for?
That's what I see in the same way as I see the.
So it's your interpretation of why a Palestinian flag is flying outside of a building.
No, when I see tricolours festooned outside, we'll say pub venues around matches, I get the same feel. I just don't like it. You shouldn't be doing that. I'm not telling them they shouldn't. I don't like that.
Yeah.
But I respect fully anyone's right to fly whatever flag and any number of flags.
Yeah.
Anywhere they wish.
Okay. Let's move on and let's talk about some council business now. As you know, we mentioned it earlier, we're in a bit of a bit is an understatement of a housing dilemma in this city. There's all talks about dereliction, which a lot of people think is the silver bullet. I certainly don't think that dereliction is the silver bullet to solve the problem. But the City Council, I know they're going to say, well, we built X amount of houses and we did this and we did that, but it's still not enough, and there's no plan from the City Council. There's nothing that people can look forward to in the future where the City Council would have the same I suppose, drive and ambition as they did to build the North Side, as they did to build Ballyfihan and all those houses back in the day. What's your solution to our housing crisis, or what would you like to see being adopted that would make the housing? And I'm talking about Cork now, not nationally, but where you operate on the City Council. What could we be doing better? What should we be doing better?
I think Cork City Council is doing its damnedest, It really is doing well. And I mean, but look, I suppose the targets that the state has set now are completely unrealistic. I mean, they're targeting 300,000 houses between now and 2030. That's talking about 55,000 houses a year. I'm looking here at the RSI report. They're not going to do that. The state is not going to, and the state won't build 35,000 houses this year. 36,000 is the target for next year. So I mean, it's a huge, huge problem. And I think okay, there's the council here is only reacting to what's happening at a national level. And I'll give you an example. I mean, I personally think we've had terrible governance in this country for the last 5 to 10 years. I'll give you a small example of how the state has created all this sort of a demand. So when the state has a crisis, it just looks at the crisis, and they never ask the question, well, what if? So, for example, when the Ukraine war broke out in early 2022, the state decided, despite the fact that it had 15,000 people homeless, including 5,000 children, tens and tens of thousands of people on housing waiting lists, and hundreds of thousands of people locked out of the housing market, it decided to open the coffers and offer to take in unlimited number of refugees. Now, I'm not saying that we shouldn't take in refugees. Of course we should. We have a moral obligation. But we have a constitutional obligation to our own people, and that comes first and foremost. And that was all set aside. So then we discover, roll on the clock, and everybody is waving Ukrainian flag. Nobody's talking about Ukraine at the moment. We've switched, the narrative has changed. But yet the slaughter in Western Ukraine is catastrophic. But nobody was talking about peace for 5 years. The state didn't want it. They were going to take on Russia, take on Russia backing Ukraine. Some of this stuff is insane, terrible. So we end up now with 100,000 people. We've tanked our tourist industry. And a question raised in the last couple of weeks there in the Dáil by a Sinn Féin TD as to the number of houses that are occupied by Ukrainian people. There's 21,000 houses occupied in housing Ukrainians. That doesn't cover all of the tourist accommodation that's closed down. My point actually...
just before we go on, because it's important, do we know the source of that number of 21,000? Or is it just the guy getting up and picking a number out of the sky? Do we know the source?
Well, that's coming from the government's own data. That's the government's own data. My point is that if you have those kind of laissez-faire policies that you can just, we already have a housing crisis. We already, per the census of that year, we have 230,000 18 to 32-year-olds living in the family home because they can't buy houses, they can't rent houses. On top of all of the other tens of thousands on housing waiting lists, and you decide to do this kind of stuff. It's insane.
Okay, so Albert, basically, the answer to the question is no. Because I asked you at the beginning, what is it the council can do, and you referred the whole problem back to it's the central government, it's those boys up in Dáil, it's their problem. You really just, you don't have a solution at council level at all to deal with anything that needs to be dealt with.
The council is only reacting and has a limited amount of resources. Those resources in housing are largely coming from the state. So it's just chasing.
But you drive a few minutes up the road here and there's houses up there, right? There's houses up there and they're boarded up. You go down the road here on your way home now. Go down the road here. Just go through the traffic lights. There's 2 fine houses on the corner there. They're boarded up and have been like that for a while.
Yeah.
I mean, look at... That's changing somebody's life. It's only a small move, but there's two or three families that could move into those houses within 6 months. Those houses could be brought back up to living standard, and they're already owned by the council. The council doesn't need permission from Dublin to surely upgrade their own housing, and they're not doing it.
Well, I think they are. I don't have the data here in front of me, but again, I don't mean to be kind of cut you short.
No, 100%. No, that's what it's all about, Albert.
No problem. But you're really kind of... you're not really dealing with the issue. That's really is a tiny, tiny aspect of it. So, for example, you know, and in fairness, like outside of the housing stock, the council and through the government, they have the Creek-Conahay scheme where they are, you know, dereliction get up to 70,000, and there's a lot of houses being taken out of dereliction. But you get all of these kind of, and it's not you were saying,
no,
the mantra that if you can solve dereliction, you solve your housing crisis.
You just said there that I'm not really dealing with the issue, and I'm just sitting here and wondering if there was one of your constituents listening to you who was without a home and thought there was 2 or 3 homes here that they could get into. I mean, for them, that's life. That's their whole life. Their kids, their husbands, themselves, they can get back together, they can form a family. So, I mean, even that answer kind of explains, and I'm not saying it's you know, explains the mentality in the council that even one house that's brought back up to a living standard is going to be a huge impact on one person's life. And it's like, how do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time. And I'm just surprised by what you said with that comment.
Oh well, no. I mean, you're no.
I'm
problem.
not. I'm just saying what you said.
I understand. Just Donal, I know poverty. I know poverty very, very.
But it's
well.
not a question about being familiar with poverty. It's been a question. It's a question of recognising the assets you have. And okay, to the council it might be just a small thing, but to the individual who's without a home, it's their life-changing ticket. And if the council think, sure, you know, it's crazy. Like I say, just down the road, 2 houses, up the road, 1 house. 3 families that within 6 months from now could be told, here you go, you needn't worry about your security anymore. Your children can bring their kids home and their friends home to play soccer in the back garden or have parties, rather stay in a hotel room in a separated family. I mean, is that not something that you'd be down to council saying, wow, look what we did for that one person? Yeah. Okay, you mightn't get a resounding standing ovation for it, but that one person or those 3 families now have a life that they were denied.
That's true, but you take one, but there are thousands and thousands of people.
Understand, Albert, it's like anything else. Again, how do you tackle a big problem? You take a little bit at a time and you solve a little bit at a time and you make progress that way. You can't, if you're looking at the overall problem and wanting to solve the overall problem with a click of fingers, you're barking up the wrong tree.
Well, perhaps. I mean, I'm very familiar with that. I'm getting daily requests and letters from people who are in a terrible situation, awful. I meet those people. I go out and I meet them. It's terrible. What can I do? I mean, I have a beautiful young woman with 4 children, and she's 600 people bidding on the one house she's looking for. No chance. I'm sorry. But it's government policy dictates a lot of this. I'll give you just as I said, I'll give you a small example of how bad policy, i.e., taking in 100,000 people, what effect that has on it. It sucks up, the enormous number of houses, enormous money, and you can only do so much. I mean, like we're bringing last year with net immigration, we have a huge problem in the immigration system. 145,000 immigration into this country. We're building 35,000 houses.
What does immigration have to do with Cork City? I mean, right now, what does immigration have to do with housing people in Cork City as regards, like I say, 3 or 4 houses that are available? And you spoke about it there. Like these people, like you spoke about a woman and there's over 600 people bidding on her house and she's desperate for a house and a home and stuff like that. And there are houses out there that could be brought back up the standard really quickly. Yeah. Even if it was a case of, ma'am, we're putting you in here. You're going to be here for 6-7 years until the local government get a handle on the rejuvenation of Knocknaheeny, the rejuvenation of the Mahon, until they build more houses. This is just going to be a stopgap for you that they'd be totally happy with. But no, it's almost like I say to you that we talk about central government, but the City Hall is playing the same game. One side is blaming the other, and the people are not seeing anything getting done at all.
Well, I disagree, because City Hall is only doing its best to deal with what it can. I mean, for example, there is an additional 1 million in the budget for next year's budget. I'm on the Finance and Estimates Committee at City Council. An extra 1 million for emergency accommodation.
Yeah. I wonder how many councillors are homeless.
But
I'm just curious to know how many councillors are homeless, or how many councillors rent, because I feel now, unfortunately, that unless you taste the bitterness of being homeless or paying high rents that people can't afford, I think there's a disconnect that nobody can understand it. It's gone. I really feel it's gone to that stage, because it's been, and you're not the first councillor to come in here, Albert, so I'm not saying it's specifically you. I've had numerous councillors in here, and every time they'll kick the can up to Dublin, but yet you'll say to them, lads, do an audit of the properties that you have, look how many of them are closed, get your guys up there, get these remodeled so it's a stopgap. But there doesn't seem to be any interest in doing it.
Well, I disagree with you. I mean, the idea of putting that over on me.
No, I'm not saying over you. I'm just saying the council in general. It's not specifically you, Albert.
Yeah. Well, I work very, very hard, and advocating for people. I think it breaks my heart to see people on the street. Appalling. I made the point. You need to deal with that. Really, Donal. Is that if the house is half flooded, you don't flood it. To solve the problem, completely. And this is what we're doing. We cannot simply deal with the numbers. It's just, and we have 145,000 people coming into this country, net, and 44,000 leaving. And we're building at the maximum 30 to 35,000. You can't deal with it. It's impossible. You've overloaded the system. It's just not possible. Okay,
but again, I think people, as much as you tell me I'm missing your point, I think you're missing the point here. I know people who were homeless, right? I know people who were, when I say homeless, they were in hotels, there were families that were being pushed around. They had to, father had to go live one place, the kids and the mum in another place. Eventually, I'll just finish this now, if you don't mind. And eventually, the parents split up, the marriage collapsed, right? And, they were a happily married couple before they found themselves in an unfortunate situation that they were in. Their marriage fell apart. And that affected, their friends, their families, their parents, everybody else. There was a big circle of people who were affected by that situation, okay? Now, if you had been, if the council had been of the mindset that we have these homes, right? They did an audit, I don't have the numbers in front of me, and they have X amount of derelict homes that we can fix up and we can give to people. Not everybody is going to get a house, not everybody is going to be happy, but there's going to be a few people who are going to get homes, whose marriages are going to stay together, whose families are going to be strong, who are going to be strong members of the community, whose families and brothers and sisters and mothers and fathers, uncles and aunts and friends are all going to be happy because these people have a home. I mean, that's as plain as the nose on your face. We'll have people going out next weekend, I don't know that you're one of them, for Raise the Roof campaign. And I'm going to say here now that I would suggest to people not to take part in Raise the Roof campaign, because Raise the Roof campaign is nothing more than raising profile for the local and national politicians that are taking part. It's not going to solve anything. We've had marches of hundreds of thousands in Dublin. We've had marches in Cork. These Raise the Roof marches are nothing more than keep relevance for the national and local politicians, get their picture in the paper and their names. I would say to people, you're wasting your time taking part in a Raise the Roof march for those reasons. But I would say this, that if the City Council, and I get where you're coming from, because you're in an atmosphere where the one thought, where the one process is dominated by big parties and dominated, and that thought is contagious and it's taken on board by other people, even subconsciously. But I would suggest that you would look outside of that and look for an audit of houses that are abandoned and that could be brought back up to spec within a short period of time, and ask why this has not been done and why can't it be done. Because Cork City Council are elected by Cork people to be responsible for the well-being of Cork people. We don't want to hear a national issue, we understand, but if there's anything, if we're in this together, if we're a team, then the team player has to do what they can for the rest of the Corkonians. And like I say, it might only be a dozen, it might be only 2 dozen, but the knock-on effects of that are huge.
Yeah, I agree with you, Donal. Of course, what you're saying is completely sensible. that. Yeah, I mean, I could have brought the data. I'm not familiar with. I have the data, but the data in terms of turning around houses is it's pretty decent actually. But the numbers are small, but the system is overwhelmed. That's the reality. And I agree with you completely. This Raise the Roof rally, I would tell people, don't support it, because all of it is about raising profile. And my attitude when I said to you there a while ago, and in relation to the decision taken by government to house Ukrainian refugees, no politician asks questions. And what happens when you ask questions? People are called a Putin stooge and a Putin puppet. And my argument, all of this is that the document that should guide all politicians is the Constitution. right? And I'll just read one Article 6 of the Constitution. All powers of government, legislative, executive and judicial, derive from God, from the people, whose right it is to designate the rulers. And all questions of national policy, all questions of national policy according to the requirements of the common good. That article really is all core to what I'm talking about here, is that it's a government's duty really that article is there to prevent abuse of government power. So individual governments they don't have the right to slice and dice the country as they see fit. And there was never asked, and the opposition parties never asked any of the government anybody in government, what effect is this decision going to have on us? How is this going to affect, when they talk about the common good, how is that going to preserve social and economic order? And the reality is, of course, it has a huge effect, but nobody asks that question.
I think we're going to have to agree to disagree, because I think small little victories eventually wins the war. You feel that we wanted the whole thing sorted and we're going to leave it to the people in Dublin. That's what I'm getting from you and the council. The council, not you again, I'm sorry for referring to you, but the council doesn't appear to be interested in winning small little fights and interested in, giving one or two families a whole new life change. And, you don't have the figures in front of you, but I'd imagine the figures are probably, I don't know, I'm going to take a guess, 40, 50 homes there that are derelict that could be brought up to scratch. I know you're knocking flats and stuff like that and doing a whole lot of other stuff, but I mean, these small little battles are what, number one, what it does, it gives hope to those people still on the list. It shows a positive action by somebody inside in City Hall that they care for the people that gave them the votes, that they're just not in there for a 4-year gravy train and then go back out and promise the sun, moon and stars and go back in again. Present company excluded in that now, Albert. That's what I'm saying. Like that, you talked about lost qualities, lost traditions. When I was growing up, not far from where you grew up, you spoke about your family and the way you grew up, and that instilled in you beliefs and hopes and X, Y and Z. There's very little hopes, and there's very little Deasy households left. There's very little Quinlan households left, for the simple reason because everybody's thrown to the four corners of the wind. And if you want to maintain the traditions and the way that you believe this is where it starts, because without a house, without a home, where Donal could go in the back garden and play and bring his friends over for birthday parties and not be embarrassed to say, I'm living in a hotel or whatever the case may be, you'll never get back to where you want to be unless you sort those issues. And again, even small little bits, even small little chunks.
It breaks my heart. I mean, I grew up everybody, when I grew up, it was a given right that if you didn't, that if you weren't able to afford a home, you got a corporation house, and there was no shame in that.
No, absolutely.
Absolutely not. And you were looked after. And if one man could go out and he could support a family and get a mortgage and get a council mortgage, so that day is gone. That's the values I want, where people can raise your family, you can look after your family, you have a hope for the future. And my heart breaks for kids now. They have no, I won't say they have no hope, but it's becoming really, really, really challenging. And as I said, there was a time when where I think the state really looked after people. It had ambition. I mean, all of the big, huge housing schemes in Toker and Ballyphehane and Churchfield, Mayfield, Gronabrougher, Mahon, they were fantastic. They had an ideal. And it allowed people to move on and be independent. Now it's terrible.
Yeah. Anyway, let's leave that, because I'm intrigued.
I can just my point really is that we've gone away from the ideal of the nation and the constitution of looking after the country, and doing nothing that would be against our own, the common good, rather than being answerable to other powers beyond this country. And that has a kind of a trickle-down effect then as well. Because if you overwhelm the system nationally, it has to affect us locally. It's destroying us.
Look, we have 3 candidates running for president. Out of the 3 of them, 2 of them are not fluent in Irish. So they cancelled an all-Irish debate on TG Carr, because the people who want to be in Uachtaráis Éireann, 2 of them cannot speak fluent Irish. I mean, for me, that says it all. I mean, there should be a qualification. You want to be president of this country, you have to speak the language. Now, the language, I'm glad to say, is coming back because of Gael skulls and everything else, and, the younger people are rekindling an interest in it. But, going back to the point, is like that, you have to, I suppose to what you're saying, tradition and history does play a part, and we should have a president in Phoenix Park who can speak fluent Irish when they're abroad or when it's called upon them. We have a 1 in 3 shot of that happening, where it should be a no-brainer. It should be the way it is. I mean, years ago, if you wanted to be a guard, you had to pass Irish in the leaving cert. If you wanted to be a civil servant, and you had to have Irish. But to be president, it appears like that, being able to fluent in Irish is not a mandatory requirement, which is probably a reflection very much of where we are. I want to move on if I can.
Eintíim go hilas go humlan that agus rinne mis me chéad agad live trí van na Gaeilge a radio na Gaeilge. I just agree with you. It's about having high standards.
Okay, I want to go back to, I suppose this is a touchy subject. Every Saturday afternoon, well, it's not a touchy subject, sorry for saying that. This is a subject that happens, I suppose, every Saturday afternoon in Cork. There's a march in support of the Palestinian and the genocide. And you say that the Cork City Council has voted to ban the Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, as well as his government colleagues, from Cork City in light of the war crimes committed by the state. The idea was met by mixed reaction from the councillors, some who expressed concerns that such a move would impact positive diplomatic relations, which furthers Israel's government. Wow. So what was the process of thought behind that idea?
Well, I mean, everybody acknowledges. I'd be the first to acknowledge what's going on in Gaza is appalling. It's terrible. But we had an appalling situation here in this country for years with the IRA and all of the happenings in the north, and we eventually had to. We had to sit down with them and we had to negotiate a settlement. And you had jaw is better than war, I would say. And if you kind of cut yourself off from diplomacy, you have really, you lose all credibility, I think. That doesn't mean I don't like what Israel is doing. I think it's terrible. But abusing them and asking them to leave the country is not a good move, I don't think.
Do you think when it's all said and done that he should be brought before the World Court and tried for genocide crimes against the Palestinians?
Well, everybody says that. I really don't.
What's your feeling on it?
Obviously there are huge issues there. It's terrible what's going on, but I'm just saying.
But should he or shouldn't he be brought before the court and made answerable for it? Him and his ministers that are.
Yeah, there's an assumption that that he has widespread support within his own country, and he clearly does not. And he was facing serious charges himself. So, but I'm just talking about at a state level. You need to keep diplomatic channels open. We had the same.
Yeah. So can I take that as a no? You don't agree that he should be brought before the World Court to answer for charges of genocide?
No, I didn't say that.
I know, but you didn't say yes either.
No.
You didn't answer the question, is what I'm saying. Yes or no? Should he or should he not? But should he or should he not be brought up against the World Court, which the World Court already has made a number of assertions against him, that he should be charged with war crimes?
Well, if what you say is true, of course, if the World Court the Court of International whatever in The Hague or any of the world bodies have decreed that is the case, of course I'd support that. I'm not fully up to speed in it, but my point really here is that we've had charges levelled, that we should, there were the same calls to expel the Russian ambassador, and I don't like that. You have to keep diplomacy open at all times, the same.
But in the history of the world, in the history of politics, ambassadors have been expelled from countries before, and politics and communications kept going, and policies and diplomatic communications were still vibrant and still working. It's just because you expel an ambassador doesn't mean to say with him or her goes the ability to communicate. Far from it.
Where's the evidence of that, Donal?
Well, there's plenty of evidence if you look back at history and you look at different situations where ambassadors were told to move out of A, B and C, and negotiations continued. You look at the Cuban Missile Crisis, for instance. It's the biggest one that pops into my head.
Yeah.
The ambassador of Russia was told to leave Washington, but still, there was still back and forth between both governments on solving that issue. So the ambassador doesn't have to be in situ to say that negotiations continue. Negotiations do continue.
Yeah, but they certainly make. I mean, they up the ante. They make. They it implies more and more risk. I mean, what you want to do really is to keep negotiations at the highest level open for as long as possible.
Okay.
That's.
Okay, it's coming up to 11:52 here in Cork City Community Radio. I'm in discussion this morning with Independent Councillor Albert Deasy. We've covered a number of topics, and we'll continue on with one that I wanted to ask, actually, because I saw this a few weeks ago where there was a suggestion that Bishop Lucy Park, when it opens after its big remodel, gets renamed. And what's your stance on that? Would you vote for... yes, let's rename it, or no, let's leave it as it is?
Well, there was a debate about this in council, and my view on this is that, and I found it quite wrong, that people denigrated the name of the late bishop by associating him with child sex abuse and paedophilia and crimes that were committed by people that he may not have even known or was associated with. So I thought that was inappropriate. I mean, I'm not aware of any evidence whatsoever to suggest that he had any knowledge of any of that conduct. And I think he was I met a father, a priest on my canvas, in fact, and that subject had come up with him, and Father John Allen is his name. And he said, he was talking about him, he said, look, he was a very fine man, this is a man, he went down, he never ate his own Christmas dinner, he did penny dinners every day, And I think it's very easy, with the kind of, with the benefit of the kind of the retrospectoscope, which is really used to say, I'd have, people say I'd have behaved in such and such a way, at such and such, if it was me, I don't think that's fair. Yeah. I mean, a lot of the people have been criticising him and criticising the Catholic Church, and I think a lot of it is militant atheism. Actually, it's any excuse to beat the Church, and particularly it's outrageous to attack the name and good character of an individual who is dead, who's not here to defend himself. And as I said at the time, it's akin to the kind of the post-mortem Soviet show trials where people were, after their deaths, were tried and convicted and exhumed from their graves. This is
when is this decision going to come about?
Well, it's going out to committee now, and they will decide whether or not. I mean, people will make submissions, and whether or not they're going to rename the park or not. So, yeah, that's it.
And what's your feeling, or can you get a feeling for which way it's going to go?
I really don't know. I mean, I'm just.
Have you lobbied for it to stay the same, or you've
just? I've spoken about it, and I've said it, and I've written about it, and I've just said, look, you need to be careful. I mean, history is history. And his legacy in terms of just he was a formidable piece of stuff, and he was attracted a lot of attention because he was fearless, and he was always a press gang following him, because not a press gang of people looking for news, because he was a bit he was a bit edgy, I suppose, right? And there was always a story going with him. But I think the idea to change the name because of his legacy, I don't think there's any. I think it's unwarranted, and you're trying to change history. History is history, and
have you spoken to your constituents about it? Because we had a councillor in here a few months back, and basically what she was saying was, the people that will be most active in this situation will be the people that will win it. So in other words, I think some of them were getting signatures. A list of signatures from their constituency, so they're prepared and they're getting ready. I'm just wondering, does the other side of the argument, are they willing to do the same thing, or will you just sit in your hands and leave it up to committee?
Well, I haven't thought it out, to be honest, about it. I've written about it, and as I said, I'd be far more concerned, with regard to sort of a lot of what I see, where people are tripping over people on the streets, and the same people who are quite happy to go around and, I suppose, take from the good name of Bishop Lucy. I didn't know him at all, but it's a kind of a tradition in Irish society that we respect the dead, we honour the dead.
Yeah. I do think that those who talk in this situation are going to lose. Those who get into action, and there is action, and people signing, documents that they can put in front of supporters. That at least you're saying, look, the public are the same way, or whatever. But
I've been overwhelmed with the number of people who contacted me actually supporting my stance. So that's something I'll do.
Okay, listen, I want to thank you very much for your time, Albert. It was a really good, insightful interview. You certainly have the passion, and I think you're doing a great job representing your constituents inside in City Hall. Long may it continue. Thanks very much indeed, Albert. Right, we're going to continue, and like I said at the beginning, I've just got a recording to play here, and I'd like to play it out now for you. It's a recording of Erica Cork at the eulogy of her husband, Charlie Cork, who was assassinated in the university in Utah. And again, this is not a political statement. This is, like I said at the beginning, this is a mother, a wife, and you know, she's just expressing her feelings and her thoughts on this issue, and you know, representing her two children as well on this particular one. So we'll have a listen to this. After this, we'll have Darren with the news.
My husband, Charlie, he wanted to save young men, just like the one who took his life. That young man, on the cross, our Savior said, "Father, forgive them, for they not know what they do." That man